Go ahead.
Fanaticism are really strong. That one would be a statistical.
What do you mean not strong effect?
Well, but it's not one of those do or die characteristics that would force everyone into a set color. It's just not. And then there's a lot of drift in the.
Yeah, so this was just an example to illuminate the point that variance doesn't mean how strong the effect is. So, in fact, it's very counterintuitive. It means exactly the opposite of what most people think. But yeah, so skin color was just an example. All right, so did you guys get this? So this is just very important because it's a very basic concept that is almost always misunderstood. And as you can see, sometimes even a Nobel Prize winning geneticist miss this point. All right, so and this is this brings us to the other point: deterministic versus predisposing effects of gene. I'm a behavior geneticist, so most people assume that I'm the one who should be a crusader explaining that everything is genetics. Everything comes from your instinct. Everything is explained by how we evolved. And to a certain degree, it's true, except that it again misunderstands the notion of how genes manifest in terms of brain function and behavior. So, without going into too much detail, let me just tell you what I think the ways should be to fight racism. So this is one. Channel the tribal instinct in the right direction. These guys are not tribal members. They are sports fans. They're not against, black or white or green or purple. They just love the sports fan. This is a manifestation, a good manifestation, hopefully. Not always, but most often a friendly, culturally acceptable manifestation of the tribal instinct. So channel it that way, okay? Another way, we are very intellectually advanced. We can understand things, educate ourselves. Learn about other cultures, learn about other customs and beliefs. So most people assume that, Iran is a backward country, Africa is a lost continent. Well, learn about the culture. Iranian mathematicians and astronomers, or these ancient ruins in Mali, North Africa, before Christ. Learn about all cultures. This is actually an interesting one. I just stumbled upon it. It's pronounced Busholjárás, chasing away the winter spirits in Hungary. That doesn't mean that we all are like this in Hungary. It's just a cultural phenomenon that you can appreciate and learn about. So learn about each other. Another thing, this is actually a quite understudied area of psychology. My guess is if we socialize, if we get exposed to other people early and continuously, we will not feel that color difference so unusual. Yeah, I'm wearing blue jeans today, tomorrow I'm wearing white, whatever. Same thing. So if we expose ourselves early on, from early childhood, to each other, maybe this kind of segregation will diminish. Another kind of, silly example, respect, of course, others. That's very basic. But shed the stereotypes. So I apologize. I don't want to hurt feelings, but here is an Orthodox Jew, MMA fighter. Now, I remember every time, I discussed with my parents how Jews were looked at during the war and whatever, Second World War, Nazi. Jews were always looked at like those who wear glasses, those who are physically not fit. Well, here is a mixed martial art fighter, Jewish guy, quite famous.
Actually, there's another Orthodox Jewish rabbi who's a surfer.
There you go. Here is a Chinese person who is not sitting in a library trying to become a lawyer, but he became what? A basketball player. Isn't that amazing? Here is a friend of mine who I actually know personally. He was on CNN too. Carl Hart, from Columbia University, one of the top universities in the world, studying addiction. He's a neuroscientist. So shed the stereotypes. Don't just accept, these stereotypes that somehow got into our mind. All right, so that's the end, and I thank you for your attention. But it's not really the end, so this is the free discussion part of the meeting. If you guys have any questions about this or anything even loosely related to it,
The SpaceX launch just a week or so ago had quite an audience. People from all over the world focusing on this kind of outwardly directed, technological advance. People now are keen on going to Mars and stuff. I wonder, is that a global perspective, but that's also another thing where, it didn't matter, race, origin, whatever. It seemed to be a unifying point.
right.
And there are more and more of those things.
It's a very good point. In fact, if you listen to astronauts who went out and looked at our globe, we all know that this is a relatively small and inconspicuous little speck of a dot in our galaxy. Nothing special about it. It's only special for us. But if you look at it from that distance, it's not that far, but just from above, a little bit in the space station, then you realize that this is where all human history has evolved, has happened. Everyone you've ever known lived on this tiny piece of rock. Why are we fighting? This is our environment. So once you gain that perspective, just like you described, and you go far and you look like that, you get that bird's eye perspective, then you realize that all these racial differences that now we know are genetically really meaningless because we are homogeneous. We are one of the most homogeneous species. We should not do that. We should just, help our culture, help our species, and live within our ecosystem, respecting our own planet as much as possible and each other. And that kind of bird's eye view helps us to develop this.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
So you believe that someday in the future racism will go vanish or racism is here to stay like religion, another version of racism as well. So what is religion? Not going to go or
Okay, so the source of racism, this tribal instinct, is unlikely to go away. Simply there is no selection pressure to remove it. Plus, once this complex behavioral phenomenon hardwired in the brain is there, it's very difficult to restructure, and there has to be very strong selection pressure against it. There's no such selection pressure. So the tribal instinct will remain. What you can do with it, how you can modify it, how you can channel it, how you can harness it in the right way, is the question. Yes, let me ask you.
So when the horse comes to my farm, all the horses are like, you're good. If I put that horse in the field, they'll chase it and they run and they create it. I don't think they eat it up if they actually caught it, so I don't take a chance. I keep it isolated so they can see it. Get used to seeing it around. Then it picks up the smell of the farm, so it smells more familiar. So if I don't like gray horses, because white horses get a stain. They don't shine.
Yeah.
If I can buy a horse that's equal to another horse, I'm not going to like it. But a friend gave me, and that's the only white horse on the farm. So it's really easy for the others to spot that horse. But if there were several other white horses, it could run into the middle group of white horses and the chance that somebody else would get beat instead of that. So that's one aspect. But I also ask myself, what is the benefit to the herd being hostile to a newcomer? And the horse that's coming in may have immunity wherever it's covered. But my group have immunity to their own closed herd. So I think there is a benefit there to keeping a newcomer at arm's length until these pathogens and whatnot sort of level up. And then they get used to seeing it, we stick it in the herd and then just get it off. So I was going to ask you a question.
That's okay. think about it, and then we'll get back to it. But let me make a point. Introducing a new individual that looks different is always a problem in our own society too. So whether it's racism or whatever, so getting to know the other person is one way to actually diminish racism, because once you get to know a person for his or her own qualities and abilities, then you look at that person as a person, not as member of a race. And that's very important. The problem is that at the global level, you cannot introduce yourself to every single person. So this particular habituation or getting to know each other is good at the person level, but not as a global policy. So let me get to you, and then go ahead.
What's the difference between those of us who are not racist and people who are racist? They get learned, or is it
Okay, so this, let me give you a very provocative answer to this, okay? We are all racists. Some of us admit it, some of us understand what this means and how you need to work with it so that it doesn't qualify for being truly a racist. But the instinct is in every single one of us. I'm not going to give you another provocative questionnaire, but I am thinking about, if I ever get to be able to write this book, I have a few questions that I would love to actually ask people who are certain they are not racist to fill out this form that will actually prove that the instinct is there. It just has not risen to the level of what we actually call racism. So remember, the point is, this tribal instinct is a Homo sapiens species-specific feature. I don't think anyone can claim that it doesn't exist. The question is, what happens with it? How badly it manifests? How wrong a turn it takes? Yeah, go ahead.
You didn't really talk about tribalism as being based in evolutionary biology as such that people in the small groups are obviously, in small tribes, are all either directly related or indirectly related within that, and that this tribalism, this idea of recognizing these superficial characteristics, that they might just be markers that indicate these people are all related, and that's why it has a fitness to it, and that's why it survives.
So I didn't talk about this because it's a complicated question. In fact, there is evidence that in a small group, there is a very strong selection pressure against being related, against marrying related. So we talked about olfactory cues. Studies have shown that there is this assortative mating. Instinctively, you don't mate with your relatives. Even if you don't know that they are relatives, they smell similar, you will not like their smell. So there's this natural selection that's probably shaped our olfactory preferences and other kind of preferences against mating with relatives, because it induces inbreeding, and that leads to random fixation of deleterious alleles, meaning genetic diseases will manifest. So yes, the tribal structure kind of predisposes us to more inbreeding, but there is a very strong biological instinct against that.
You don't really have a choice if you're.
You do. You hunt for wives, you mix, you bring them in. So there are a lot of cultural ways to go around it that actually evolutionary biologists identified as common practice in ancient times. So the tribe remains a cultural unit, but it's not a biological unit. It's not a family in that sense. It's not a bunch of genetic. It's a very good point, but it doesn't. Yeah.
Could you comment on the practice of, let's say, that occurs within some ethnic groups and so on, of emphasizing kind of certain aspects of identity in a way that are so tribal that kind of undermine the fight against racism?
Okay, I'm not sure if I follow. So what do you mean? Give me an example.
Let's say with certain, like the whole concept of identity is a way of emphasizing what ethnic group that you belong to and what you want to belong to. Sometimes identity is related to ethnic groups, sometimes it's related to religion, sometimes it's related to anything like that. But some people kind of emphasize that and some people don't. My theory would be that to the extent that you are emphasizing these aspects of identity, sometimes when they are artificial, you are emphasizing and you're kind of making the struggle against racism more difficult.
Yeah, a very good point. So that's why I brought up that's why I showed that photograph of the sports fan, all belonging to a group that they define based on the sports club, not based on the color of their skin. So that's one way to fight racism. So to channel the tribal instinct in the right and more acceptable direction. It's a good point. Yeah. Yes.
In your booklet, I have a chapter on the success of religions and getting over this racism. Because I mean, religion seems to be able to get people from different races together.
Yeah.
Successfully.
So that's a good question. So religion is another way to define a group. I am not going to touch that for a very simple reason. How many of you have read Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion book? Okay, all right. Good. So I think it's an amazing book. The problem is if you really explain what you think, only people who already know what you're saying will read your book. And that's the only way I would be able to write about religion, and I don't think it will work because I would not be able to persuade anyone who would not agree with me already. So it's even more sensitive an issue than racism. So probably not, but it's a good point. It's a good question. Yes.
You're referring to the people that would read that type of material. You're referring to those who would agree with it. Okay.
So yeah, I think if I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it this way, but I would love to talk, present, and write in a way that conveys my message clearly, but at the same time in a tactful manner, so that it doesn't hurt and turn away people from the idea or doesn't make people go against trying to keep their minds open. So that's why it's a balancing act, because science is brutal. It's logic, it's theory, data, proven, not proven. But when you translate that to talking about social issues, society level phenomena, you have to be sensitive how you deliver that. So that's, basically that's my answer to your question. Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention. It was a really lovely afternoon. You were very active. I really enjoyed your participation.